All right. Hi, I'm Shayan. I am 28 years old at the moment. I am absolutely passionate about the environment, doing good in the world, and making a difference. And I'm really, really happy to be part of Voices of the Future.
Cheyenne, it's an absolute privilege to have you on board. I've known you as little Cheyenne, as baby Cheyenne. I know your family, your mom, who's very, very dear to me. And I'm really proud to have you here today because even at this young, tender age of 28, you have broken through the ranks. You're leading a company. You have navigated your way through difficult times. Which a lot of young people don't even encounter in the entire life, and you have done already in your young life. So your voice in Voices of the Future is critical. You are the voice of youth. You are the voice of creating. You're going to live about an extra 100 years because of all of the new technologies and longevity, and we will be talking about that. So you'll have 100-year career ahead of you. So yeah, there's a lot of time for you. So a lot of wonderful things are going to happen. But in typical Hollywood, Bollywood, and Nollywood style, let me take you back to Little Cheyenne or Littler Cheyenne in your early days of your life. Is there any moment, any person, anything that helped you to shape you to become who you are today?
Definitely, definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tarek, for this. Going back to little me, the really little me, um, when I was probably a few feet high versus what I am now. Uh, I think the things that shaped me the most was definitely my family. And the reasons being, well, my parents, first off, both were extremely, extremely ambitious people, I think. My father started out as a security guard for the Hilton in Dubai many, many, many years ago. And by the time he retired and I was in university, he was the VP of Commercial Bank of Dubai. He heading multiple divisions of the bank. So he was always a very ambitious person. He kind of taught my brothers and I the merit of hard work and education and the value of it. And not only that, but also having foresight. He was always able to think ahead, and he was very ambitious for someone who had to put himself and his own siblings through schooling and basic education and stuff. Um, and then when it came to my mom, bless her, she was ambitious and she didn't know how ambitious she was going to be until she did it. And she started working from a young age as well, where I think when she was 17, if I'm not wrong, and continued working in the services industries for years. And around about the same time I was born, I was just a toddler. She set up her company that I'm now taking care of very happily. I call the company my little sister. I've grown up calling it my little sister because I would grow up and she would be working all the time. And I would be so curious. I used to ask her as a child, how did your day go? What did you do today? And she would give me her full responses. It wouldn't be like, oh, it was fine. She would tell me exactly what she was doing, the clients she was meeting, what she did with her clients, and she would just tell me the story. Now, a lot of it, of course, went over my head, as you can imagine. But I was always paying attention. I was always kind of absorbing everything she told me. Um, so I'd say both my parents had a lot of influence in terms of that, the grit needed to grow, and they were very ambitious, and they taught us that you don't need to settle. It's fantastic to keep striving for things, but also that you will hit roadblocks. It wasn't easy, of course, for my father's career nor my mother's. And I was really young. They actually had a divorce. And a lot of people at this point go, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. It's all right. They're, bless them, they're fantastic parents, but they weren't always aligned, and um, it was interesting because that in itself, I think, shaped me massively. The reason I say that is, they both had immense respect for each other. And they taught us to continuously uphold that love and care and respect. You know how divorces can be messy with families and things can get really rough. So where parents are arguing and not necessarily being very pleasant, and that influences the children to also have certain perspectives towards their parents. But bless them, they were both extremely, extremely aligned on that front in terms of we're going to uphold each other in front of our kids and make sure that they understand what respect is and how it doesn't matter which roof you're under. This is how our family values are going to be. So I think that created a very, very strong base for myself as well as my brothers when we grew up.
Interestingly, you did a degree in psychology, which maybe 10 years ago was nice. But today, in my opinion, is one of the best degrees you can do. Tell us your experience in terms of the reason for doing it, because again, probably your mom says, well, you need to do, economics or MBA or something like that and do something in business, like both your brothers are. Why did you go down the psychology route?
So this is quite it happened almost accidentally. While my parents were very ambitious, they never actually put pressure on my siblings or I to pick a career path. They were always very, very encouraging of whatever we wanted to do. And for about the first 15 years of my life, I wanted to be a vet. I'm extremely, extremely passionate about animals and the environment. And I mean, I grew up, rather than watching TV shows, I was growing up watching Animal Planet. And I would constantly annoy my parents about getting these huge encyclopedias just about animals. And I would like go through it within a week, and my dad would be like, "You're reading too fast. Can you slow down?" But I wanted to be a vet for the longest time. And the fundamental reason was just I want to help animals because they don't have a voice and they don't know how to express how to say that or communicate that they're in pain or they're not okay. And I really felt passionately about that. Now, I hit a major roadblock, and that major roadblock was the sciences, specifically chemistry. I was
Okay.
fantastic in biology, in physics, in all my subjects. It was chemistry that came and said, we're going to make it tough, real tough. So I eventually at some point I turned around and I said, if I'm struggling and I had a tutor, I had my brothers tutoring me, I did everything I could to make sure I was passing. Um, and it was just odd. And it could be because I'm a little bit neurodivergent. But when it comes to chemistry, it slowed me down. And I realized that this is going to be a massive hindrance for the rest of my career in the space of being a vet, because I'm going to need that. And I need to get along with it. And it took me over a year of me bashing my head and just saying, I'm struggling here. So I changed gears and I sat down and I thought about it for about 20 minutes. And I thought about it. I said, okay, if my fundamental reason is to help people who aren't able to help themselves or struggling, then I may as well take that concept and convert it to the next best thing, which is people. And that's where I said, okay, I'm going to do psychology, and I'm going to take the same concept of trying to help someone or something that's struggling and apply it for us in the space of people. And my parents were quite surprised because, like I said, it was 15 years consistent of I'm going to be a vet. And it
Yeah.
suddenly changed to I'm going to do psychology.
But I think you probably are a vet in the sense that most humans are almost animals, and I'm just joking. They're not. But I think humans today need a lot of nurturing. They do not really have a voice that they can express themselves. They get stuck on a treadmill and they cannot, especially in corporate life, they are stuck. And quite perhaps unintentionally, I mean, the fact that you did psychology, your company, Global Management Consultants, is in the people business, is in leadership business. And well, why am I telling you? You tell me. What business are you in?
So global is in the business of creating outcomes through the root of culture and people. And we started out
God,
with,
that sounds so consulting
I
style.
know, it's
Tell me,
ingrained.
I know. Tell me, what do you really do?
Yeah,
You're a brain doctor.
I'm a brain doctor. I like to link things. I like a story. I also like to write. So when it comes to the work we do, I like to create a story out of it. If
Hmm.
I'm working with a client, person, company, whatever it is, NGOs, we do a lot of nonprofit work too. Um, we always start with, well, what would you like to see happen? And based on what people would like to see happen, I like to reverse engineer. I am at the end of the day still a science student. Psychology is a science subject, and everything is about what are we trying to prove here when we do our papers and when you read through the science. It's what are we trying to achieve? What's coming in the way and so on? How do we answer questions? So when it comes to work and work at Global, it's always about how do I answer this question? How do I help this person achieve what they need to achieve? And then it's looking at the environment around them. It's looking at what they're doing, their personal impact, and trying to build that connection and for across all of those spaces to well then achieve what they want to achieve. Now, it's very simple, honestly. It's problem solving, like you said, the brain
Sure.
doctor. But it helps when there's someone else who's helping you kind of figure out what that path needs to be. When you're stuck in the thick of it, it's not easy to rise above and take a look at the
Yeah.
whole, you know,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
let's bring it down to more specifics because I
Mhm,
mean we are talking in very broad terms.
mhm.
In terms of the work that you did, you've been doing a lot of work in psychometrics, yeah, as an example, as a way of creating a frame and a structure in which to describe people. That I have used your work throughout I mean, last 20 years or so. And it has framed a lot of my management thinking, my team building thinking, my culture thinking. Tell us about that psychometric work that you do, and how do people perceive it?
Oh, that's my favorite. When it comes, and it's totally not because I'm the brain doctor, but it's fun. It's fun. I love it. The reason being, uh, when it comes to people, we're always trying to put a label on something. We can't help
Mhm,
it. It's human psychology that's trying to see, is this a threat? Is this safe? Is this this? What
mhm,
am I dealing with? Right? Our brains are constantly on the lookout for that kind of, sussing out that is this good for me? Is this a threat? Will I like this? Will I not like this? So using things like behavioral assessments, personality assessments, psychometrics are fantastic because they help you make sense of the world around you and they help you make sense of
mhm,
yourself on top of that.
mhm,
Uh, and it's interesting because people are like, oh, it's only for training or it's only for coaching or it's
mhm.
only for self-improvement. But actually, no, everywhere we go in the world, across the board, we're
Yeah,
interacting with people first,
yeah, yeah,
right? And that these tools are there to help you make sense of that and be
yeah.
able to become effective, at communicating and connecting with anyone for that matter.
Sure. It personally, my personal experience is that it really helped to shape me and enabled me to understand myself in a way that I had never understood myself before. I always thought I was extremely self-aware until I realized that I wasn't. And part of that self-awareness for me, when I did a similar disc analysis, and I'm a high ID or a high DI, I think I'm just
Mhm.
around there. Um, I started realizing that I was creating companies in my own image. I was creating companies that can break through, achieve, sell, and grow, but are they profitable? How am I optimizing my processes? Am I ensuring that the basics are being done? And that to me was the big, huge elephant in the room that I had not seen. And I realized that I need to build whole brain companies. And I understood my strengths, which are very distinct in my case, but I also have weaknesses, which are also very distinct in my case. And therefore, I was hiring people around me that were not like me and boring and detailed and process oriented. And then is a massive realization for any senior manager, leader, CEO, general manager that this is my weakness, and therefore I'm going to be hiring people who are not going to be like me, and they're going to be irritating the hell out of me, but I need them. When I'm interviewing my CFO, for example, or or chief operations officer, if they do not irritate me in the interview, they are not doing well.
You know,
So,
my mom had the exact same strategy, by the way.
yeah,
You know who annoyed her the most?
yeah. Okay, you're asking too many questions.
All the time she would want to murder me sometimes.
Yeah. But really bringing it back to business and to our day-to-day life, I think that self-awareness helped me. Um, so how do you find that helping companies? Because, sorry, one other thing, again, I'm on the recipient side of this, I'm the client. And a lot of people are actually scared. I mean, yes, it's behavioral analysis and we will not evaluate you and this is not your assessment on that way. But people get really nervous when
They
it
do.
gets into that. And so how do we demystify this and sort of say that this is really to build and shape you and build culture and organizations? What's your conversation there?
So what's really interesting is a lot of tools in the market, and people have had different exposures to variations of this, right? Sometimes they see the non-scientific ones that are, you know, the back of paper napkin style of these tests and stuff. Some of them have gone through very rigorous ones. A lot of the times, it depends completely on how it's deployed and how it's been introduced to someone. And it's giving them the assurance that this is not here to say you're good, bad, or ugly. This is here to just help you understand a little bit about yourself and, you know, how do we get better versus what's not good about me. You know, you said, for example, I have very prominent strengths, and then I also have my weaknesses. It's less about the weaknesses. It's just more of this takes more out of you to do. It's not that you can't do it. And a lot of people, when they do these assessments, that's what they think. They think it means this is my box and I must stay in it and there's nothing else beyond this
Yeah.
and I'm not going to adapt. Versus it's all about how do we adapt? How do we leverage on our energy to lean into our strengths, but also to keep an eye on the fact that we may have things we're not the best at. And how do we balance this out? So when you go in talking to someone saying, well, it's not here to label you in that manner, it's here for you to identify who you are and look at how do you get better at being you.
Yeah,
Then it can be
but
a little,
in fairness, people do get labeled, sadly, and I have been too in my life, and almost inadvertently, I have labeled people. But the very interesting observation there you made is it may not be an area of my strength, but I have enough intellectual energy and determination and leadership within me to take on the most difficult topics. I'll give you an example. If you give me a 50-page contract to read and give me 30 days, guess when I'm reading it? On the 29th day.
yeah,
But then my adrenaline flows and
yes,
I'm goal oriented and I'm completion oriented. So I'll do it. And I'll do it in 3 or 4 hours. But I could have done it 3 or 4 hours, 28 days before, and I didn't.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, those kinds of things. So it didn't mean that intellectually I couldn't do it. It
Mhm.
mean my energy flow wasn't there.
Absolutely.
And it just meant that, oh God, I have to read this bloody 50-page contract kind of conversation in my head that I'm playing with myself, because that's not where my energy is flowing at this point in time. So
Exactly.
yeah, so when you're building companies, let's say you have 10 people in the company, individuals have a structure, but
Mhm.
companies have a tilt one way or the other. How do
Mhm.
you just tell a chairman, CEO, board, general manager, and sort of say, well, your company is too process oriented, therefore, these are the outcomes that may happen within your company versus individuals, because I think they are two independent boxes.
Absolutely. It's always about alignment, right? It's always about first, did you even realize this is the case? If you do realize this is the case, is there a reason we're not looking at how do we make this holistic? What's coming in the way, right? And when it comes to things like let's take your example of the company is extremely process heavy, very rigid, and so on. It could be the industry, it could be that it's regulation, they have to be that way, whatever it may be the case. Then it's about, okay, how do you allow your personal leadership style to come out And how do you allow for your team to also feel connected to what you're doing? If your team is passionate and able to do what they need to do, right? And they're not feeling stifled in the way that they're being maybe micromanaged. Let's say the process is simple, that you have to do X by this date and achieve all these things with 0 errors. Okay, sure. Now, if my team member is able to follow that process to the T and they're comfortable doing so, then that's fantastic. But let's say I have a team member who's a little bit more flexible, has a way to follow it or achieve the outcomes it's meant to with the 0 errors, but they go about it slightly different, then I should probably find out what they're doing that's working for them. Because if it works for them, it might work for someone else too. It's about creating flexibility. I call it the sandbox approach, where it's like, here are the rules of the game. This is the barriers we need to work with. Within your sandbox, you can do anything you'd like to do. Essentially, when it comes to getting people to play ball and pay attention to each other, look at new ways of working and so on, I always define that sandbox approach, which essentially says that here's the barriers, here are the rules that we cannot do anything about. Within that sandbox, you do whatever you'd like to do. And that gives flexibility to people to do their work in the space that's comfortable while following the processes and rules that they must. But how they achieve that outcome, we have to, at the end of the day, trust people to do their work.
Mm-hmm.
We hire them to do something. We need to have the trust in them that they're going to actually do it. There's no point in me breathing down their neck. Then that's not me doing my job. That's me breathing down their neck.
I talk about immune systems. We have an immune system, and as the immune system is there any kind of virus, anything from outside comes in and approaches us, we go there, our antibodies get it and block it.
Absolutely.
The same thing happens in organizations. The same thing happens in companies, because they have their own corporate immune system. We call it culture. You call it culture. I think it's an immune system. And like you said, our brains block anything coming from outside. We get scared, we get uncomfortable, and so on, because our immune system is being attacked. How do you diffuse immune systems? How do you diminish immune systems to enable you to bring about change?
Well, one, using DISC helps a lot, right? Using the psychometrics help a lot to just gauge what's going on there. What is the general sense of the room and the people who are there, right? You're able to see that, are they leaning into a certain direction? Who's setting the culture as well? Each person, the more layers you have, each one of those managers is setting their own subcultures, right? So it helps give you an idea of what's the space like. So that helps to begin with. The second is always looking at it from their perspective, right? Why would they be scared? What's coming in the way, right? And listening to them in terms of what are their pain points, right? What are the things that they're passionate and excited about? When you go in, for example, in a session, a coaching session, if the person you're speaking to is decided they're not here to engage, there's not much you can do. Versus, and I've had those coaching sessions with people, with leaders who are just like, I don't believe in this and I don't think this is going to be of any use. And I'm like, okay, then tell me how I can be of use to you. We have 2 hours together. What can I do for you? What's important to you? Right. And just opening and having that it's very easy for us also when we're being blocked to get defensive and feel like we need to push. But sometimes that push is not going to just make the immune system tighten up. And going in and trying to see things from their perspective and understand and create alignment that, okay, what I'm trying to do is going to achieve this for you, and you wanted this. So tell me now what's slowing us down further, right? And constantly breaking down their problem as much as possible and talking to them in the language that they're familiar with, talking to them from the reference points they're familiar with, even if it means sitting on the floor and eating on the floor with them. But if you're going in from that perspective versus I'm coming in with all this knowledge and all this, best practice, they're not going to give 2 hoots about it. As long as it's relevant to them, that's where it is, honestly.
So I'm gonna share a slide with you, which I use in my presentations all the time. These are immune systems, and immune systems come in and hit organizations, and they block initiatives because And these are the 50 reasons that people do why not to do something. We've never
Yeah.
done it before. We've been doing this for years. The boss will never buy it. It's too radical. So and so it can't be done,
You
and
don't
so
have
on.
the
And you
resources.
don't have
Yeah.
the resource. So this is your immune system response. You see, so one of the things I do as a technique, as a methodology, is I get the team together and I say, okay, post-it notes, write 3 things that you said no to in the last 6 months, and put it on the wall. And now we have 10 people, we have 30 things people said no to.
Yeah.
And why? And then we're going to have a discussion on why you said no. And in that process of why you said no, at least 10 to 20% of those projects should have been a yes. And then we say, what blocked us from saying yes to those things? Was it psychological safety? Was it discomfort? Was it we don't understand it enough? Or any of these reasons? So I actually call it my no list. And so I go into boards and say, let's do our no list program. And to me, this becomes a very interesting way to share. And I'm going to I'll stop sharing this. This is fear. This
Always.
is the amygdala clicking in. And so, what is the big catalyst in a C-level team that fundamentally changes?
2 things usually, and they're both completely different ends of the spectrum. Trust. They trust you. They've understood what you're trying to tell them, and they trust you. And 2, you link it to the outcomes they're trying to achieve. Very simple. And that's why I said it's completely different spaces. Because the moment you've built a bit of trust where they're like, okay, this person is here to listen to me and all my woes and problems and see things from my perspective, because that's what people want fundamentally. They want people to align to what their story is. And then based on that, that's where you take it forward and you're like, okay, you trust me. You've brought me here for a reason. Let me do what I need to do. Let me help you.
I would 100% align with you as far as trust is concerned, and I think that is important. That basically enables you to move forward in your job. That does not mean that they change. I have a more fundamental thinking behind that, and I go back to fear.
Always. It's always fear that pulls people back.
Yeah, and so for me, yes, I trust Shayan. I'm still scared of bringing AI into my business. I am still scared of hiring these funky young people. I'm still scared of doing all of it. Yes, I trust her, but that's the but is what narrows it down to. And I'll share a slide with you in a second. So yeah, please.
Yeah.
How do you rebuild that sense of shift that they have to make?
Little by little. It's always a little journey. Trying to throw the ice cold water over them with change. Change is a very, very scary thing for people. It always is. The word change is scary. It gets people to be like, oh, I don't like what I have, right? So when you're trying to create serious shift, it's about chipping away at the mountain. And every little step then counts. And so when it's that, then it's always about creating the roadmap that, okay, we want AI here. Here's our roadmap to get there. Now, the challenge is usually people think it's a very big thing that must change everything immediately versus actually, no, there's a lot of baby steps you need to take to get to that level. There's and kind of connecting them to the reality of it, right? Where they're probably envisioning something that's very extreme and they're scared of that, rightly so. That's an extreme situation they have in their mind. So it's correcting that perception. And the only way you can do that is on top of trust that, okay, let's align here, right? Let's see things a little bit. Let's bring us back down from the moon. We're not completely there yet. We're not at the moon yet. And working with this is the ground reality. I know you will not necessarily take AI in and explode overnight, right? We all know that's not possible. Let's make it happen though, right? And working with them in a way to find out what are those steps that needs to be taken, and let's just try this. Just you like me, I like you, you trust me and I trust you. I'm not going to try and hurt you. Let's work with just this little pilot. Let's work on these baby things. So I'm all about the slow, gentle, but sudden expansion, right? It's the domino effect. And I love the domino effect when I'm working with my clients, because it's the same thing happens with disc, the same thing happens with AI, all of it. It's once you've gotten the wheels turning, then they keep moving.
Yeah. May I challenge you?
Go
Do I
for
have
it.
your do I have your permission?
Go
Uh,
for it, always.
okay. You know me. You know me for all your life. I'm out there pushing the boundaries.
Mhm,
I actually disagree with you, and I'll tell
mhm.
you why. Change in our current environment of how the world is changing is too slow. So I said
Absolutely.
change is very yesterday. Transformation is better. And over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I was doing work on transformation, which is faster. Then the next
Mhm.
level, I said, now even transformation is too slow. We have to always and constantly look at reinvention.
Absolutely.
That's stage 3. And stage 4 is metamorphosis, which
Mhm.
is a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. So you can't have a caterpillar just like slowly eating and slowly adjusting to AI and putting an AI up their ass and then moving forward and so on. They have to make a decision at some point in time that I want to fly away. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
they're going to get eaten by birds, and they're going to be because it'll be a big fat caterpillar sitting there.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is that incremental change has some merit, but in today's world, incremental change is actually working almost against a company, because fundamental change is more necessary rather than incremental change. One more point on this, and that is that if you were making your budget in December 2022, whatever
Mhm.
company you were in, okay,
Mhm.
and the budget was $10 million, and
Mhm.
you have a huge HR department and whatever. 3 months later, you had ChatGPT. The
Mhm.
world changed. 6 months later, HR job descriptions were being written in 1 minute.
Yep.
And therefore, I have a 10 people HR department. I don't need more than 2. So your entire budget changed. Your
Mhm.
entire strategy changed.
Absolutely.
How can this be incrementally different changed in your
So
world?
let me recontextualize my response, right? So my
Okay.
response was very simple. It's how do you get them to say yes to you? How do you make the shift happen with the leadership level, right? Where's the catalyst? The catalyst is you need to show them something. Once they bite, then they can move fast, right? You can't try to get the elephant to run as fast as a cheetah if it doesn't want to. Very simple. However, get them to start running. Once they see the merit, like I said, it's then going to move much faster. With disc, it's the same thing. I don't have to wait to do a 6-month program with the team for them to immediately coming to me and saying, we must have this across the board. I mean, I hear it while I'm in the middle of introducing the concept of behavior to people, where they're like, we need this with our teams. I'm like, fantastic, we will do it with your teams. But now a month earlier, when I was trying to talk to them about this, they were just probably like, But now that they've experienced and tasted it, they've not even eaten the whole thing. They just tasted it, a small flavor. Then they're like, okay, we think that this has value. And then everyone's moving because everyone's seeing the vision together. When it's just the one person or two people trying to push, then the incremental must happen. But when everyone sees what you're seeing and feel what you're feeling, that's revolution.
Okay. We know about FOMO, fear of missing out, and whether you're a young girl and it's on Instagram, or you're an older person and it's your business, we have been struggling with FOMO for the last 5 or 10 years, right? I have
Mhm.
something new, and that's called FOBO, fear of
Mhm.
becoming obsolete. And to me, that's the catalyst. To
Yep.
me, when boards and companies and teams say, oh my God, if I don't do this and I don't seek Shayan's help, I'm going to be obsolete in a year's time.
Mhm.
That's when they move. Not nice, not slow. It's a slap on the face. I am going to be obsolete in 2 years' time if I do not move now. What I'm
Mhm.
saying here is urgency and the speed of which change is happening. Because by the time we are talking about ChatGPT, the news stories that I'm now reading, less than 12 months later, is if you are only using ChatGPT, you're behind, because
Yep.
there are at least 10 other things that are there.
Mhm.
If you're only hiring people in a certain way. I mean, one of the key new questions for all HR directors is that what AI tools do you bring to work? Is bringing AI to your job. That's a thing now. So because every new person coming in is using some kind of AI tools. So in a job interview now, it's not which degree did you do? Yes, we can do that. But what AI tools are you using now to do your day-to-day job? Because that accelerates that accelerates the process. So our questions are changing. Potential obsolescence is increasing. Therefore, culture shift is necessary. I trust Shayan. Shayan, please help us because we are in the shit if you don't help us. So what I'm saying is that we need to create that level of urgency as opposed to being nice and kind and soft and fluffy.
So I think it's the same thing said in different ways, right? I can say the same thing in a very intense way. I just choose to make sure my words are non-threatening when I need the buy-in.
Of course. No,
when
I
I need the
understand that.
buy-in, only at that point. Otherwise,
otherwise they'll panic. I mean, yeah, your emotional intelligence is very high, so is mine. So I obviously manage it accordingly. But this is a frank conversation, and the idea for people listening to this conversation is that we had a real conversation, not soft and fluffy.
Always. No, I agree with you, T, because the fact is the world is ever changing, moving faster and faster. You know, you hear when you're having a simple conversation with your friends now that I don't know what's happening. It felt like it was, Jan just yesterday. Well, time's moving faster in its own way, and likewise, the world is changing and shifting around us. We need to learn to move with it.
Absolutely. The next one is issues related to the future. My view is, again, that anything that can be digitized will be. It'll be a million times faster and a million times cheaper.
Absolutely.
But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, love, harmony, compassion, spirit, heart, soul, trust, ethics, common sense, critical thinking, they will be a million times more valuable. So you as a psychologist, you as a business doctor, you as a person who's helping culture shift and change, how do you now start changing that perception that people have that all our human values and human attributes are going to be able to define our future? Or am I just smoking something?
No, I think you're absolutely right. See, at the end of the day, all technology, it's a tool. First and foremost, it's a tool.
Yeah, 100%.
And as is fire, fire can be used to burn down a house. Fire can also be used to warm the same house, get the gas going, keep the heater on, and so on and so forth, cook the food. So when it comes to all these beautiful and amazing and scary technologies out there that people are developing, they're being developed by people first. It's going to be up to us to create the infrastructure around it so that it's allowed to thrive, because the fact is, when it comes to a lot of those in power, they don't even understand half the stuff we're talking about. So and that's important because that's going to help contain anything where it's burning down the house, right? Otherwise, people are cowboys at the end of the day. And when we find something exciting, we don't necessarily stop to think, are we even ready for this, right? We always just rush ahead with our innovations. And that's great. We love innovation. It allows us to progress as a species. However, then definitely the care, the love, the trust, the respect, looking for our blind spots when we're teaching these tools to do what they're doing, ethics, all of that will have to play a massive role for sure.
Indeed, and setting you up with this question basically was also about schools and our learning. We don't teach empathy at school, we teach geography. We don't teach ethics at school, we teach them history. Maths is important, science is important, because that's something that but what I'm saying is that knowledge going forward is easy, critical thinking is more difficult, empathy and values is more different, asking great questions is more different. So our education system needs to change, shouldn't it?
Completely agree. It's been needing to change for a while. The system of memorize this information and throw it up on an exam is probably going to, hopefully, I'm really hopeful, disappear really soon, because that doesn't gauge how well you've understood a concept. That gauges how much you're able to retain in the moment. And that doesn't necessarily do anything for us. The whole point is you're teaching people comprehension of what they're looking at, right? So when you were saying I'm teaching them English and they're reading books, are they just reading books, or are they trying to understand the messages behind the stories? Same for history. History can teach us a lot about humanity, but are we just looking at, oh, this is when a war happened and this is when this happened? Or are we looking at what are the lessons to be learned here, right? It's the analysis that is missing a lot of the time. And that's where the critical thinking kicks in, and you can actually have conversations around the ethical piece and so on and so forth. But definitely school systems need to change, educational systems need to change to, allow us to explore that side of ourselves.
Sure. What is your biggest fear when you think about the future?
My biggest fear when I think about the future, I would say, again, the same thing I said earlier, the fire can be used to burn down the house. And when people who are supposed to be the ones in charge don't understand that, or they don't know how to harness this, then that's a really, really difficult situation, because people are using it for their own gains versus how do we help uplift people. Because, for example, with AI, generative AI, already is being used to steal the art of lots of artists. As a small example, people are just feeding the AI imagery and so on of people who have put in their blood, sweat, and tears to create the work that they're doing, right? And they're using it to write books, they're using it to create new art, and they're doing everything around that. That does not uplift your community.
Mm-hmm.
That is one person taking the work of many people and using it for their own gains. That's not right. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think Hollywood always has an advantage on this one. And last year there were 3 movies, Mission Impossible, where the AI went rogue, Artist Stone, when AI went rogue, and Stealth, when the plane went rogue.
Mm-hmm.
Using AI and stuff. So therefore, and the reason I'm saying that is that you're absolutely right. We need to find an ethical and moral center to be able to do this. And I dare say it's not there. I mean, the current events in and the global response on that is making me 10 times concerned a year ago, because the international system of controls and stuff like that is actually not quite working. So this is only to do on the politics side, but there's no control on data. There's no real control on AI. There's no real, and AI, actually, I call it a weapon of mass destruction, if not used properly. But that's for another occasion. The other side of the coin is what makes you the most excited about the future?
Oh, that just gave me chills. I think the thing that I'm most excited about also are the people who want to do good in the world, I would say. And I know that sounds a little fluffy, but
No, not at all.
and it's because everywhere you look, once you start looking to see what good is being done using the tools like AI and so on, then you find more than you can imagine. I'm right now doing a lot of work with a nonprofit that's based out of the US, and they're focused on using AI to essentially listen to sound. And what are they doing with that? So they deploy devices into the forest, into the sea, all of that, different landscapes. And all they do is they listen to sound, and they're creating almost like a sound library. And it's picking up on all the sounds of the forest, biodiversity, and so on. And they're able to use that to identify whether species have been in a certain area, whether there's an impact of the deforestation, all of that, where are the animals moving, and so on. Now, why is that important? Is because one scientist listening to a 1-minute clip, they have to do that for almost an hour before they're finished listening and identifying what they need to for one species on that clip. AI is being used immediately to, within seconds, analyze that clip, identify multiple things, even down to, that's an odd sound. This sound doesn't seem like it belongs here, and that sound belongs to a chainsaw. and using that information to then send alerts immediately to an on-ground team to be like, go check that out. Something's not right here. And now that's a very small example of how things can be used in a completely different context, and people are doing a lot of grassroots work as well as important work using all these same tools to uplift, again, community.
Absolutely. AI for good can be amazing. It can eliminate climate change, health issues, climate, species, biodiversity, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's the human beings that tend to get in the way. The machines are there to serve us, and that's what they should do. You're in the people's business, and one of the biggest fears that people have is losing jobs with all of this technologies coming in and so on. Now, technologies have always been there, and new things have happened. And 25 years ago, software came in. 15 years ago, mobile phones, smartphones came in, and jobs changed, and new things changed. Now, data point: by 2030, most of the jobs, 70% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 do not exist today. That's a Dell study, McKinsey study, and so on. 70% in most industries. In some industries like banking and finance, is actually up to 80% of the jobs do not exist today. So in 6 years' time, there'll be jobs that don't exist, and we'll have the same people. How do people feel about it, and how do you give them comfort and support that we just need to find a different way of doing it? This is progress.
I think people, first off, don't always think that far ahead. They know this, but they may not pay attention to the fact that things change to the level that they change, right?
Very true.
And it's up to those who are leaders to have the foresight that this is going to impact everyone around me, including myself. And based on that, work, the incremental work, but also very rapidly have that foresight of being able to upskill, reskill people and get them into a state of readiness. As things are coming, we need to pilot, test, see how our immune system is responding to these things. If GPTs have just been introduced, how is my organization leveraging them on them or not? And then immediately based on that, oh, we're having difficulty with this level of adoption or this level of change or this level of whatever it may be, how do we manage for it right now? How do we start training people right now, educating them right now, so that they're in a state of readiness? They know this is coming, because on the day-to-day, people aren't really paying attention, but these things are happening, these things are coming, there's no avoiding it. And it's up to us, like I said, as the leaders, to keep imparting that information, knowledge, that guidance, that this is the direction we need to go. Let's go together.
Brilliant. So as we come to the end, Shayan, let's both of us get on a time machine, a time capsule, and project ourselves into the future. And we have now just arrived at your 100th birthday. What are we celebrating? What do we see? What do we see around? So if you're 100, I'm probably around 200, but it's a completely, it's a completely different ballgame. But so you're 100, I'm 200. What are we seeing?
I hope I'm with my cats.
Okay.
But I think it would be a fascinating world, to say the least. I would hope that I'm still able to be as tech savvy as my own grandmom is right now. She's pretty good. She knows how to use all the social media. She's constantly coming and asking me questions that I have to pause and think about and like, okay, can we do that with the phone? Let me find out. Let me find out. So I would hope I'm as tech savvy as her. But what would it look like? I think it would look like a place where you have robotics kicking in for healthcare and home assistance to begin with. A lot of things that would help, essentially not automate, but make things a bit easier for people, right? In terms of how do you know this old person's about to stand up and probably need some assistance. And, you'll have a lot of your, I'm forgetting the name for it, the home assistants, essentially, right? The home pods and the like, where they would help keep track of your AC, and it has that tap been left open by that old lady and probably we should switch it off. Things like that, where it would be seamlessly integrated into our lives. Right now, the thought of us using home pods to control our ACs and lower the blinds is a bit odd. At that point, it would be the most normal thing that you'd be like, hey Siri, can you switch off the lights? you know, and something as simple as that. But it would go a step further, right? Where you'd be surrounded by people who are using these technologies to a great extent. To us, it would still be odd, because by that point, there's another wave that we have no idea is coming. And I'm very curious, would people finally eat the insect meat?
Probably.
Probably. I would imagine by now we're doing that.
Probably not, because by that time you will have enough external things. Just we take the pill and everything is
Take the
fine,
pill,
and
absolutely.
we have all the nutrition and stuff like that. Um, uh, as an extension of that, if you were to sort of put a message in a bottle, just one simple one-liner as advice to the future generations, what would that one-line advice be?
I would say it's to remain human, but strive for progress.
Okay, remain human, strive for progress. Amazing. Shayan, it's been absolutely fascinating. And here you were, concerned and nervous about this interview. You are amazing. You're outstanding. And we had a very testy conversation, and please forgive me for that.
Oh no, not at all. I love a good debate.
Yeah, absolutely, because this is what makes it authentic, and this is where we are different. This is where Voices of the Future is different. This is where the book that we are putting together and all of the outcomes from there, and getting a young voice like yourself is actually important to be able to challenge the thought processes. And it's interesting, it's usually the other way around. Younger people are more radical, and older people like me are more sort of wisdom oriented and slower. But I guess I'm doing a Benjamin Button here. I'm the radical person in here.
Always. I love it. I'm here for it.
But Shayan, thank you very much indeed. You have been an absolute treasure. You do amazing work. You're helping people, and just your sheer humanity and kindness and the way you started this whole session to want to make a difference. I'm about all about making a difference. So we are 100% aligned. And I hope I can serve you in your objectives and just be there for you as much as I can. Thank you. Thank you
Likewise,
very
Darren.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.